the carriage.
Thank you, Taryn.
Thanks for that awesome introduction. Today, we're going to talk about my splitter. Now, this splitter has been modified. It's a Huskee 22 ton. So it's a cheap box store splitter. I know I've shown this before, but for new people or people who haven't caught those other videos, this has been modified to have a boom on it. Former classmate of mine, a guy I went to school with, runs a welding fabrication business. And at the time, we had blocks that were, they're a massive white oak tree, and the blocks were 40 inches across. 3 guys were really struggling trying to handle them, trying to get it into the foot of the splitter when it was in the vertical position. I took the splitter over to him and asked him about building a boom to use in the horizontal position. And he said, "You don't want to do that. You're asking for somebody to get hurt doing that. You damage your splitter at the very least." So he said, "Just give me a little while to think about it and I'll come up with something." And he did. He welded this boom onto the beam of the splitter. And that's pretty heavy duty stuff. Then he welded this heavy box tube onto it, and that's the crane part of it. We've got this swivel here, this pulley. The cable runs out through from this hand crank winch. That's a 1,600 pound winch, rated for 1,600 pounds. Runs through an ATV roller flare head out to a pair of logging tongs. And then you take the logging tongs and you hook on to the piece that you're wanting to split, crank it right into the foot. Now, one guy can do this alone. I've done it a lot now. So we're going to give a little demonstration here in a few minutes of how all that goes. And I want to show before we start the size of some of this stuff. Look how big this is. This is hollow. They're still heavy. This one's not cut clear in two and it's got a lot of mud on it yet. So I'm going to take my splitting maul, see if I can knock all the bark off of there before I do any sawing with my chain. We're solid on this end, but it's, as you can see, pretty good sized block. But also on the splitter, before we get started, these come with a really cheap channel for a tongue and just a little flip down foot for a stand. And wasn't much. And with this added to it, it was really heavy on the front now. So whenever I go to handle it, like to stand it up vertically, I run the ram out so that it takes more weight off of the front, puts it on the back. It helps a little bit. But I had Lane lengthen the tongue on it, and it had a 1 7/8" hitch for the ball. And I modified that to a 2-inch, put this Bulldog jack on it. And it's so much better. That's a 3x3 pretty heavy tube. That's a lot better than that cheap channel tongue that was on there before. It makes it a lot easier to move it around by hand now too. Got a little more leverage against it. So like I said, this is just a cheap splitter, but you're going to see in just a couple minutes here, it's very capable with these modifications. I'm real happy with what we've done to it. Really makes it work good. So let's get started. Okay, let's fire up here.
subscribe to the channel.
I bought this splitter brand new back in 2009. We gave a little over $800 for it at Tractor Supply in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin. It has served me well. It's a cheap box store splitter, I understand that, but it's done a pretty good job for me. However, we had a massive white oak tree go down in a windstorm, and the trunk of that tree measured over 40 inches across. Three guys were really struggling with those blocks, and fingers were getting smashed, shins were getting all banged up, tempers were getting short. And so I ended up taking the splitter over to Elgin to a friend of mine who was a classmate of mine, runs a welding fabrication shop, Lane Frieden. He owns Frieden Welding. And I wanted a boom built for the horizontal position, so I never had to raise it into the vertical. And he said, no, you don't. You don't want that. Somebody's going to get seriously hurt doing that with the size of stuff you're trying to handle. He goes, just leave it here for a little while. Let me give it some thought, and I'll come up with something. And boy, he did. This really works good. I've been really happy with this. It is slow. I realize it's not a Wolf Ridge or some of the fancy splitters, but there's not near as much money in this. But the advantage for me now is I can work alone. I don't need help with those big blocks. And you got to be careful. You can still get hurt, but I'm cautious, but I am super happy with how this has turned out. So let me know in the comments what you think.
Okay.
Thanks for watching.